We're talking about regression, going back in time.
Yes. So is that quite a common thing? You do that with a lot of clients?
I do that with quite a few, not a lot, quite a few. The reason for that is that when I work with a client in terms of levels of consciousness, we have to work with what's going on in this lifetime. So invariably, most people, they've got a lot of trauma, like you've experienced yourself. And so then I work with the trauma in this lifetime. But there comes a point when the person has gone up to a level of, in terms of level of consciousness, around 550 usually is when it begins. And then I ask, what's your highest level of consciousness? And they'll say, it would be 550, 570, 700 maybe, depending on where the person's at. And then I say, well, what is your lowest level of consciousness? And so on this list, it will go all the way down to below 20. And that's when I know it's from a past lifetime.
All right.
So once it's below 20, I know it's a past lifetime. So then I begin to ask questions about how far away we're talking about. Is it 100 years, 200 years? And it can go, well.
So the past lifetime is dragging them all the way back down to below 20 because it's not been dealt with.
We all have lifetimes in which we have died unconsciously. What I mean by this is that we were so traumatized in our life that our soul never became a conscious participant in the life. And so when we died unconsciously from the point of view of the fragment of soul that connects with each of us. And so because we died unconsciously, it sent ripples across other lifetimes. It's a difficult one in the sense to get our heads around, in the sense that we ourselves are not a soul. We are part of a soul. So we are fragments of soul, and we're fragments because we are within time. Whereas our soul, which is in another dimension, the soul is here to experience within the three-dimensional, but it experiences it from within its own dimension, and which is the ninth dimension, and it has access to us by the sixth chakra, which is where imagination, our subconscious, that we think is ours, but actually that's actually linked into our soul. However, within the second chakra, we've also got a link to our soul, and this link goes across time. Because we've been born a number of times in time, so the soul is outside time. It's still space, but it's outside of time. And from this place, we've got different incarnations at different times. So from our perspective, we're here, 21st century. From the soul viewpoint, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago, it's all part of the same moment. It's all available to the experience of the soul. However, the soul itself has sent out fragments of itself to connect with each incarnation, and it's all happening now, and yet for us it's already happened a long time ago. So what's happened is that those previous fragments, they died unconscious. The soul wasn't conscious. A human being is an ego machine. and that is an automatic reactive machine in the world. So what helps the person to become self-aware is the fragment of soul, is the fragment of consciousness from the soul into that incarnation. But until that person becomes self-aware, which means moving beyond the ego, then that person is at the mercy of all experiences, and those experiences are traumatic, and it's the traumatic experiences that gets in the way of that fragment of the consciousness of the soul from manifesting consciously, which it does in the heart. So the energy, if you like, that emotional energy, that it has to be transformed to be experienced in the heart. When it comes, by the time we have a separation from our soul, we're conscious. Yeah. So we've created a separation. We can see ourselves. We can see ourselves dispassionately. Before that, we're totally identified. We're identified with our emotions. We're identified with our bodies. We're identified with our thoughts. And that is part of the problem with mankind, that we have acquired through millions of years of interaction, because, I mean, we weren't just ignorant 13 years ago, you know, I mean, we've been ignorant many times, and we've been more advanced many times. And there's been cataclysms on this earth that has put us back to almost zero, and we've come back. And, you know, it's a process that's been going backwards and forwards. But what happens is that we get indoctrinated from young as to how to behave, how to conform. And, you know, we want our parents to love us. And then if our parents are cruel with us, or they're very demanding to an extraordinary extent, we might become fearful of them. But we're needy of our parents. We desperately need to feel safe with them. So the only way we can do that is if we start to self-censor. So we start to control our behavior in relation to our parents, so that they will approve of us, so they won't kill us, so that we'll be fed, so we get some cuddle, some comfort, you know, whatever. We ourselves begin to become a critical voice within us. Don't do that. You know, my little boy, my big boy now as a man, once we were in this shop, and he was maybe three years old, and he was in front of the sweets, and I just walked by him, and he was talking to himself. And if you looked at him, you could see that he really wanted the sweets. He wanted to pick one up, and he was saying to himself, "No, Daddy doesn't want me to have one." So he had already begun the process of self-censoring. Yeah. And so we do that. So anyway, we grow up, and the words are in our head all the time. And they're criticizing, we criticize ourselves, we criticize others, and it drowns a lot of other experience. Yeah. And that is part of the enslavement of mankind. We've got this critical voice inside us, with regards to our own behavior, as well as, of course, we're also very critical of other people. So we become enslaved to our ego, because all of that is automatic. It's not conscious. It's just little bits of our machine.
So these people that have the previous traumatic experiences are dying so you're saying they're dying unconsciously?
They die unconsciously.
So that, what you mean by that is that they've just had traumatic, I mean, is it therefore the case that it's the trauma that they've experienced that means
they never separated from their ego.
So
but here's the wonderful thing, that all of that is happening right now. Previous lifetimes.
From a soul's point of view, yeah. So you can deal with it now.
we can deal with it now. We can actually go back. It's like a tape recorder. We can actually go back and play the beginning, the middle, or the end.
Go back to that episode.
Absolutely. So we can actually, in this lifetime, once we've sorted out our traumas
In this episode,
thank you, in this episode, once we've sorted out the traumas here and now,
get the box set out.
Thank you, we get the box out, and we start to say, well, where are we going to go? And
therefore, can you go into future episodes?
Well, that is something which I have a question mark about, because let me ask. Okay, I'm going to ask. Okay. So I want to find out whether fragments of my soul already exist in the future. The answer is yes. And are we in the present time, are we in a position to alter anything in our future? No. So although the fragments in the future already exist, from this present time, we're not able to go into the future to alter anything. That can only happen from the future to the past, yeah. Is this because there is uncertainty into the future? Yeah. So what Charlie's saying is that the future is not set in stone, although it's there, and until we reach that point in the future, we cannot deal with the past. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm quite intrigued to know what's happened in my past episodes, but I'm not ready for that then.
Well, you may or may not be, I don't know. I mean, so far we've been dealing very much with the present. And may I ask, are you happy for me to say in public here what your level of consciousness is?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your highest present level of consciousness right now? Are you above 3? Are you above 4? Are you above 350, 360, 355? So you're a 355 right now. Now that is a good place. And it means you are already acquiring separation from your ego. But you're not totally there. You've got your head above the parapet, but there's still a lot of trauma in the present life that needs to be dealt with before you rise above 550.
So you know that somebody who's at 350 has still got trauma to deal with.
Oh yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm a lot higher, but I still have trauma. But my trauma is different from lower level traumas. My trauma is mainly to do with ripples from past lives. And so in my morning meditations, I invariably work with past lives, with the trauma from previous lifetimes and how they affect my present life. Because at the end of the day, we achieve liberation from karma when we've cleared all the decks from the past as well as the present. And that is doable. I mean, I'm doing it right now. And what we do is we go to the past lives and we experience the pain and the suffering from the past lives. We incorporate that into the present, and then we go to the time of their death. And at that moment of death, we imbue that fragment of our past with our love. And we help that fragment to become conscious before death. So they actually, and in gaining consciousness, everything goes into perspective and it's cleared. Sounds a bit weird, but that's how it goes.
So so if you've got a client who's at 500 or 550, then you know that they have sort of cleared the decks of their own life.
I don't take anything for granted,
No.
and bear in mind that I myself, I'm just the vehicle for Charlie. So I don't rely on my own judgment. I don't rely on my ego judgment. I rely on Charlie to share with me, through levels of consciousness.
But it sounds like you're noticing patterns already.
Oh yeah, the definite patterns. But when a person is here and we're ready to work with a level of consciousness, I ask, what is your highest level? And then what is your lowest level? And if the lowest level goes below 20, then I know it's from the past. So then I begin to ask questions to do with the past. And then I isolate the lifetime. And then I isolate the emotion that is relevant from that last lifetime. So I find out about the person in that time. And anyway, yeah.
What's my lowest level? Can you ask what's my lowest level just now? Just because then
ego.
Is it? I'm just curious.
All right, yeah, no, that's all right. So right now your highest level of consciousness is 355. What is the lowest part of your personality? What is the lowest level of consciousness of that small part of your personality that is operating at the moment? Is it below 100? No. Is it below 150? So is it above 120, 125? So it's about 120. So you've still got parts of your personality which has trauma built into it, which is affecting you today, but which nevertheless goes back to a certain day. So I could ask, so okay, well, this lowest part of your personality, which is at 120, does that relate to the present? No. Does that relate to when you were much younger? Yes. So what age are we talking about? Are we talking above 20? Are we talking between 50 and 20? Are we talking between 10 and 15? Less. So are we talking 9, 8, 7? So there is something when you're 7 years old there's a small part of your personality that has got stuck. There was some sort of trauma, some sort of event. Now, that event from when you were 7, is that a ripple from a previous lifetime? Yes, it is. So that ripple from, and we're not going to do this, but that ripple from a previous lifetime, is that more than 100, more than 200, more than 3, sort of, we're talking what, 200 plus a bit, about 200. So about 200 years ago, you've got a lifetime where you've had some sort of trauma, and the ripple of that was already affecting you when you were 7 years old. But right at this minute, we're not ready to go there.
No.
And another thing to bear in mind is that we actually have got to have a certain level of congruency in this lifetime, in terms of our body has got to be physically, emotionally, and mentally congruent in terms of its health. Yeah. If we've got a lot of mental rules and regulations that define us, all of that gets in the way. Yeah. Belief systems, they're insidious, and we all have them, and we're unaware that we have them because they're who we are. Yeah. We're defined by them. And so having that mental flexibility is something that we have to build towards in some way or other. We have to get there. Emotions, well, we have to learn to play the piano of our emotions. We have to learn to be able to experience all emotions. It's a bit like being an actor. You know, we have to be able to experience any emotion. But most of us, we've got a key stack, and we really struggle with some emotions.
Yeah.
Others we have no problem, but some of them we really struggle. So we have to have all that flexibility in our system, because otherwise we cannot. I tell you what it's like. It's like a house. You relate to this because of your job. Think of the electrical wiring that fits a house, right? So you've got some thinner wiring that does electrics, and thicker wiring that does the plugs, and even thicker wiring that will do the electric showers. So depending on the power output, you require different breakers and different, So, because you don't want to blow a fuse. Well, if I take you to a place where the emotions are really powerful, you'll blow a fuse. You haven't got the wiring, the energetic wiring, to experience intense trauma. Intense trauma is really painful to experience. I mean, I've experienced the pain of the world, and it's, you know, it's heart-rending. Okay.
So you're going there just now, like
yes, unfortunately I'm very sensitive. So I can go there at a moment's notice, and I can feel it, and I can experience it. But my system can take it. I can deal with the tears. I can deal with the emotional intensity.
So you just let it.
I let it flow through me. It flows through me. I don't have to do anything. It flows through me. And so the same thing happens when we go into previous lifetimes. And the same thing happens when we get to a point when you experience one of your intense traumas from your childhood that was suppressed. We experience that pain, and we have to go through all the bits of our life to experience all those traumas to build up. It's like what you do when you go jogging or, you know, on your bicycle, you know, you build up your stamina. But in the process, we build up the wiring, we build up the emotional wiring to take on board the intensity of the pain, which is not really pain. It's only pain because it doesn't flow. When it flows, it's just an intensity of expression.
I think I know what happened when I was 7.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the age I was when my brother had an accident, and he pulled a kettle of hot boiling water over himself, and he almost died. So I don't know what. I just remember that was
okay. That's fine.
That was
whilst we're here,
that was definitely traumatic.
So whilst we're here, so this is for the people who'll be listening. I'm not sure they can see us that clearly. Sorry. We're facing the light.
It's in silhouette.
Silhouette, yeah. It's that's the problem with this camera. I don't know if I can bring some more light into here with the. Doesn't really help. Anyway, the importance is not the visual but the words. No, it just makes it worse. It's with this, it's the... I would have to do this. Let me see.
Like that works.
Yeah, that's better. You see, because I've taken away the light from me. So my apologies. Right, so what I wanted to share here is how I've just demonstrated very quickly my ability to, in this case, do you want to share your name or not?
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah. So I've just demonstrated my ability to connect with Gary and to pull, if you like, a rabbit out of the hat of his childhood. It wasn't me, that's my connection with Charlie. And this is not the first time that Gary has experienced this with me. Yeah, I mean, we've done
several already. Yeah.
And so I'm able to to pull experiences from the client's past where the trauma is stuck, and it gives us the opportunity to begin to process that and go with it. Yeah. And that's the now there was a time when I had to hold on to people. Now I don't even need to do that anymore. I can do it from any distance.
That's remarkable.
Well, it's sort of, you see, how is this, I mean, if we deviate, how is this possible? And, you know, is it just some sort of psychic skill within me? Actually, no, it isn't. It is because we do have a soul. We all have a soul. And interestingly enough, I only recently learned this for my second book that I'm halfway through. And it turns out that in kinesiology, which is something that I practice with people, is one of the methods by which I work with people, we usually do muscle testing on people. And I now know that if I do muscle testing on you, I'm actually connecting with your soul, which is the equivalent of my Eric. Yeah. So we all have our individual soul that manifests through the subconscious, and so when I muscle test with you, the communication comes directly from your subconscious through the arm, and so that's your response. But that comes from your immediate soul inside.
So so what you call Eric, it's like my Eric.
Yes, your Eric, as in your immediate soul, the one from which we have all the fragments across time. So all the fragments across time together become my Eric, or your Eric, or whatever you like to call your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of that happens via the subconscious. And when I do it the way I do it, my Eric is the go-between, because it's still happening via my arm, it's still happening via my subconscious, except it's now happening from my Charlie, which is a higher soul. It says, so my Charlie, loads of Charlies, all the Charlies together is, forget that. My Eric and all the Erics together create or are part of the children, if you like, of Charlie. And all the fragments across time, they're all the children of Eric. So when I do this from a distance, I am engaging via Charlie. So Charlie has got a direct conduit to Eric, and Eric manipulates, is in control of whatever happens with my arm. Yeah. But when I do it with you, I'm only communicating with your equivalent of Eric, with your immediate soul.
So it's both our immediate souls talking to each other, or is Charlie still involved?
When I do muscle testing on you, the communication that comes from you comes from your Eric. To do what I do now, the communication comes from Charlie. It's one step beyond. And this is available to anyone who learns to muscle test once they've reached the level of consciousness above 550. So beneath 550, so you could do muscle test now, but you wouldn't really be able to access Charlie. You'd be able to access your equivalent of Eric.
All right.
Yeah.
But now, as I am now.
Yeah. However, your level of accuracy would not necessarily. In fact, I will test this now, because I've already done this, but I've been doing this with Charlie. So Charlie comes on board once a person reaches a level of 550. Basically, the pathway is available. Their consciousness has expanded to the point when this becomes available. And so what I did is I asked Charlie, I said, well, because Charlie had said to me some time back that my level of accuracy is at 98%. And that is as high as it's possible to be for any human being. No one can go any higher because we all have egos. So we can only go so far, and that's it. You know, we're alive, we're human beings, we have ego. And there's always that 2% chance that I can be wrong, that my ego is going to interfere unwittingly, but you know, it happens. I'm aware when it happens, pretty much. So I accommodate my ego in the involvement in this process. So from 550 to 889, there is an increasing level of accuracy. So at 550, it's around 50%
Accuracy. Right.
with Charlie. And as you keep going up, the accuracy goes up and up and up and up, till it reaches 98%. So I've never asked him what is the level of accuracy with Eric if you do muscle testing with another person. So I will do that. Okay. Are you willing to share this information? He is. Okay. So if I am a kinesiologist and my level, let us assume that my level of consciousness is at 450. So my level of consciousness is at 450. And I do muscle testing with another individual who may have a variable muscle, their level of consciousness, let's say for the sake of argument, the level of consciousness is 200. Will I be accurate with them 100% of the time? No. Will I be accurate with them 50% of the time? Yeah. 60, so about 65. So if their level of consciousness is at 200% and I am at 450, I will be accurate with their Eric about 60% of the time. If their consciousness is at 450 and mine is at 450, will I be accurate at more than 65? No, I'll still be accurate at 65. Is it possible for me to be more accurate than 65% at level 450? Yes. Does their level need to be higher? Yes. Will I still be accurate if my level is lower? If their level is at 450 and mine is at 250, will I still have a 65% accuracy with their Eric? No. So there are gradual increments. So if my level of consciousness is at 350 and I muscle test, if I do hand muscle test with myself to access information via Eric, will my level of accuracy be above 50%? Yeah. Will it be above 60? No. Will it be about 55? Yes. More. 56, 57, 50, about 57% accuracy. So those are not bad odds. You're slightly over 50% accurate. Mm-hmm. If you were gambling, you could count on that.
Yeah, it's not great odds, but
they're better than 50-50.
Better than 50-50, yeah.
The problem is knowing when to trust yourself. Mm. And also, so part of it is learning to let go. Mm. You know, a lot of people, they don't do muscle tests, they do dowsing, and it's exactly the same thing. Well, what are the odds of your accuracy?
Dowsing?
Pardon me?
You said
dowsing with a pendulum.
Right.
Yeah. So your level of accuracy would also be exactly the same, because what we're doing is we're putting our ego to one side to allow our Eric to communicate with us by us not being in charge of the arm, whether it is with muscle testing or with a pendulum. Mm. So learning to let go. Yeah. Mm. So there are varying degrees of level of accuracy depending on our level of consciousness. I definitely encourage everyone to start doing muscle tests, because at the end of the day, you know, people all say, I want to know about myself. I want to know more. You know, I spent years looking at astrology charts and going to palm readers. Tell me about me. Well, you can learn all about you by yourself, by communicating with, you know, at this level with Eric and yourself. But you have to build up. You have to begin to grow that connection. When I was in my early 20s, I came across a book, The Little Voice Within, and I picked up that book. When I read it, it was from the Theosophical Society, and I read that book and I made a pact with myself. I said, from now on, I will listen to my inner voice. I will listen to myself. And I got to tell you that from that day forward, there has been guidance in my life. Sometimes it was greater, sometimes it was less. There's so much I didn't understand. And I went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, but you know, there was always that little part inside me. You know, call it your guardian angel. I mean, use whatever language you want to call it. But my antennae was on the receptive mode for this voice within. Now, clearly one has to be careful. If your level of consciousness is really low, you get a lot of bullshit in your head. you got to be very discerning as to what you hear, because remember, a lot of what we hear in our heads already is all regurgitated machine-like aspects of our ego, of our mind, and that takes us nowhere. In fact, that is the root of madness. You know, when you've got all these thoughts talking to you all the time, this is the way to madness, because you know, where are you? You know, you're nowhere. All you've got is this machine, and you've got this tension and frustrations, and you're lost. So we do have to be careful, and we do have to be discerning. Having said all of that, as we start to work through our traumas, it is so important to begin to listen to the voice within us. And the voice within us can become the voice outside us through muscle testing. We can gain a measure of direct communication with our soul.
Can you muscle test yourself, or do you have to have somebody else do the muscle? Well, that's what you're doing. This
is the muscle testing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is all in my website, how to do this. Become proficient with the self muscle test, and start asking questions galore. And bear in mind that depending on one's level of consciousness, you've got a percentage of accuracy and a percentage of not so accurate. And so to begin with, the information that we get from Eric, okay, let me ask. So information from Eric, this relates to my personal health. Can I use Eric's information to ask about other people? No. Can I ask information from Eric to tell me about previous lifetimes? No. So a lot of this is to do with, you got to go up another level to Charlie. Yeah. But you can certainly do this so if I gain a measure of communication with Eric, and I'll assume that my level of consciousness is above 250. Do I have a better than 50-50 chance of accurate information? Yes. 55, no, but at 250, definitely better than 50-50. We're talking 51? No, 50%, okay. That's a 50% chance, that's not bad. So there's a lot of people at level 250. So at level 250, I can learn to do the muscle test, and I can ask information about my health. Am I allergic to this food? Is this food good for me? do I need certain nutrients? Am I missing some things? Personal information. You can begin. Charlie can give us information as to the workings of ourselves in whichever way you can think that information through. I should also mention that you're better off doing it when it's not full moon or new moon. So the best times, especially when you start this process of learning, choose the weeks which are between the new moon, so like from full moon to new moon, and the week between new moon and full moon. Yeah, so you got 2 weeks in the month when your level of accuracy is going to be better, because I don't want to go into it right now.
So is that just after new moon and before full moon?
Yes,
the week after new moon.
The week after new moon and the week before new moon. So that space in between, the middle. You choose. What is it? It's 2 weeks between one and the other, right? So you choose the midpoint.
Okay.
So you've got about 7.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. How many days? Okay. So how many days between full moon and new moon are going to be the safest in terms of accuracy? Are we talking 7? Nearly 8 days. So it's nearly a week period.
Yeah.
Between the 2 high points of full moon, so new moon, full moon, and full moon and new moon. Yeah.
So you're not affected by the moon so much now, because your accuracy is quite.
I don't come from Eric. I come by Charlie.
All right.
And I am not affected because when I engage like this, I'm in a place of love. So how much am I going to share in this one little video? There's something called the critters. I don't want to go into it right now. You can look it up. I've talked about it in other places. But we're all affected by some sort of parasitical influence that happens with the moon at certain times of the month. There are safe periods in between. When to be safe from this influence, we have to be in a state of love. We have to be in our hearts, and we have to be connected at a higher level, and then we're free. It doesn't mean to say that I'm not under the influence. I still have 1 day or 2 days in the month when I notice that I'm a little bit more emotionally jingly. Yeah.
Then you look at the lunar calendar and you realize.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes.
Is that a full moon then, or?
Full moon's the worst. The new moon is more to do with mental belief systems, constructs.
Right.
Yeah, how we see ourselves mentally. So we have to be aware of that.